It's time once again to go racing.
It does not get any better than this.
The pressure is really on now.
Yes, it's pole position. Lights out and we're racing in PSGL.
The first lap has been absolute chaos.
What an overtake.
Oh no!
I've never seen anything like it.
Side by side again. This will be settled right at the end. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Season 30. What a milestone in the history of PSGL. This is the PCF2 broadcast. If you saw yesterday's F1 stream, what an incredible start to the season that we have had. And let us hope that the F2 guys can maintain that momentum. They certainly did last time, and I'm fully expecting them to do so again. My name is King Kodiak, otherwise known as Chris Buxton, and I'll be one of your commentators throughout this season and throughout tonight's festivities. Returning to my side, I'm very happy to always say, is Mr. Jacob Hancock, otherwise known as Aladar.
Hello, hi. Yes, it's very, very good to be back. And as you mentioned, we've been set up perfectly by the F1 action today, which is the sideshow, of course, the appetizer for what everyone wants to see, which is F2. And yeah, no, I'm delighted to be back. First time commentating here in 2022, and hopefully not too rusty. We'll see.
Oh, it's very much, you never forget how it's done, let's be honest. So the countdown has happened. We have 18 drivers with us. We are missing a few. We have some rather amazing names with us in this split as well. I mean, the lineup in F1 is just absolutely mind-blowing. But what we have here in F2 is not to be scoffed at either, quite frankly.
Yeah.
We've got some amazing talent. We will run through them when we get into the session. And we kick things off, of course we do, in Portimao. It would be a bit odd if we started in a different place to yesterday's stream. That would be a bit strange. Let's see if we get the same, if the weather gods will smile on us this time, because we had bright and clear sunshine yesterday. What do we have for the first qualifying session? That looks pretty bright to me. All right, so what names are we keeping an eye on for? All 18 of them, but
Yes.
Who are we looking for in particular, Mr. Aladar?
Who are we looking for in particular? Well, there's both of the McLarens. That's who I want you to look at. That's who I'm sure many of you will have seen yesterday in action in F1 as well. Thomas Ronhaar in particular showed up big time, driving as a reserve in F1 yesterday. And he is 7th in the time trial leaderboards for Portimao, right? But that's actually more like, I think, 2nd. It's kind of hard to tell which times are legit and which aren't. But he has a 1:15.176 in time trial, which puts him above any of the F1 Esports Pro Series drivers. So this guy is unbelievably quick at this circuit in particular, and probably just very quick in general. So absolutely Thomas Ronhaar, he's going to be the guy to beat here today, and that's going to be an uphill challenge for pretty much everyone. One of the people most likely to do it, as I already alluded to, is Ruben Pedreño. He, however, sits a relatively humble 33rd in the time trials and didn't quite match Ronhaar's heights in F1 yesterday either. So yeah, watch out for both the McLaren drivers in particular.
Yeah, and the gaps in between each car that we saw yesterday and the time trial board reflects broadly the same kind of story, is unbearably close. We saw it a lot in F2 last season as well, and I have no doubt we will see the same here tonight, and more than likely for the season to come. A few people trying medium tyres as a first break-in lap. We saw that a couple of times yesterday, although most people stuck with the softs throughout their session. So who've we got? We're looking at Connor Muir in the Aston Martin. We have got Jack West listed second in the Williams. We have Jordan Poland in the AlphaTauri. We have one of our first medium shod cars just coming over the line, starting his first time lap. That is Will Lewis in the Haas. Ikebania is standing in for... Oh, I told you this earlier and I've already forgotten. Sam Corby is who Ikebania is standing in for. And the other stand-in is Villacampa, who was a full-time driver last time. He's a reserve this time, standing in for Chanakinchi. He's in the AlphaTauri. We also have Luke Smith in the Alpine. We have got Jack Laverty also in a medium shod Haas. So both the Haas runners going for medium first runs. We got Sam McBride. I thought my audio had died then, which was a bit odd, but no, just my game playing tricks on me. Sam McBride is in the Williams. We have got Simon. I want to say it's Perigny. I don't think
I'm going to go with Simon Perigny.
French driver.
Yeah, that's if you want to go super French with it.
Simon Perigny, much better than how I was saying it. Now, also another name that we're very interested in keeping an eye on is Jost Nordique, as Will Lewis gets a first time on the board at 1:16.5. Now, this is our It's our PlayStation champion from the F1 tier, who's come across to the PC side and starts his PC campaign on pole. Nice. Literally watching you complete your first time lap, 1:16 flat. Oh dear, that's a name that's already had trouble. Another one we were eager to see. He's rejoined, which is Andrei Tarabukin. Where is Andre? He is there. Well, he's back in the pits, but he's in the Williams. Sam McBride is first one to break into the 15.9s. I think 15.5 was the pole time yesterday. So we're already getting very close to that. We have Norbert Jakob back with us again. Norberto, I believe he was commonly referred to. He is in the Ferrari, jumps up to 5th at 16.3. Never mind, Jack West has now put his name. Williams 1-2. Oh, how they wish.
Yeah. And actually... just quickly on Jack West, I was mentioning Thomas Ronha, Ruben Pedreño, these guys in the time trial standings. The third guy in this field is Jack West.
Wow.
Jack West has a 1:15.421 in time trials. That's good enough for 39th in the overall leaderboard. So he is definitely another one to watch here, and a name I don't know very much about. So I'm quite interested to see how well he introduces himself to us here today.
Excellent.
And other drivers that have come across the line so far. You mentioned Jost Nordic, and then Jordan Poland, another guy who's come over from the PS side, the PlayStation side. He finished, I believe, 4th in PSGL, PlayStation's top tier last season. So both him and Jost are representing that lot, as would be Duncan Hoffland if he were driving here today.
Yes, Duncan Hoffland not with us this time around. Hopefully we'll see him next week. Andreas Dormeyer returns to us here in F2. He's set a time 15.974 and brings his Ferrari back to pits. Who haven't we mentioned? We haven't mentioned Thomas Ronha. So there he is in the McLaren. Always mentioned him at the top of the show. And there he is. Andrea Terabuka, we saw disconnect and reconnect. He is thankfully back with us and coming to the end of his outlap. Ruben Pedreño back in F2. So both the McLarens have already had a race here in Portimao. So you would think they would be a bit more warmed up. Tom Martinez returns to us as well in the Red Bull. He's gone for a medium run as well. A couple of people set a time whilst I was mentioning. Villacampa was one of them. I think Jack Laverty might have been the other. He's returning his car back to the pits. So early pecking order being formed. Oh, Luke Smith. 15.6. Oh, now that's a benchmark. Goodness me.
Yeah. Luke Smith does have a tendency to show up from time to time, and he seems to be doing that here in the first race of the season. As soon as I say that, of course, Thomas Ronha goes faster, but that is Thomas Ronha we're speaking of. So that puts him pretty close to what he actually managed in F1 yesterday. His final time in Q3 in the F1 tier yesterday was a 1:15.395. That was good enough for, I think, 4th on the grid for him, unless I'm very much mistaken. So he's not got too much space to work with before he starts beating what he managed yesterday, and that was impressive enough. So yeah, Thomas Ronha, very strong early on here.
Yeah, Talk about a shot over the bows for the banker lap. My word! It was Boromond that took the lights to flag. I would say lights to flag victory. It sounded like he ran away with it. He absolutely didn't. He had a lot of fighting to do to take home the top honours, but he did it from pole nonetheless. There is Andrei Tarabukin just coming over the line in the Alpine. That's 12th with a 16.3. So more time to find for him. Saw somebody else jump up the field. Not sure who. We've got yellow flags out there, of course. We know this process by now. People finding space out there to get their various hot laps. Because most people are out there to get on with the job. Only Simon Pireni is not gone out there for a lap as yet. Of course, there's not going to be any penalties or some such. That would be impressive for the first round of the season, but no. No one is carrying any penalties or some such, so no one's carrying a qualifying ban or any such like. 1.1 seconds separates first to 16th, but I'm expecting that to really condense.
Yeah, absolutely. A few of those guys towards the tail end have set their lap on medium tyres. Jack Laverty, Jonah Martins, Tom Martinez and Will Lewis have all set their fastest lap on medium tyres. So they have got a lot of improvement to go and a lot of time in the pocket. At the moment, it's Andrei Tarabukin, Norbert Jakob and Conor Muir who are the guys who are in the most trouble at the moment. All of them down there in amongst the medium tyre runners. There's a solid 0.2 of a second between Norbert Jakob and Jordan Poland, who currently occupies 10th spot. So Jakob, Tarabukin and Conor Muir all under a bit of pressure at this stage as their banker laps are not really good enough.
No, but at least we're not facing the three-phase qualifying sessions that F1 faces. The F1 tier tends to run the three-phase qualifying. We run the quick qualifying here in F2 as we see Sam McBride getting out of the way of one of the Ferraris. Who's he just let through? That is Mr. Jakob that's gone through in the Ferrari. He's sporting the Ferrari Academy Series, or FES tag, I should say. 16.3 is current time. But even those at the top of the tree, we're seeing coming out again for another hot lap, Jack West and Luke Smith, both coming out fairly quickly for another run. So no one's sitting too much on their laurels. Now, we did have a bit of a lull in the qualifying the third qualifying session is only 10 minutes long, but there was still a period of time when we had that usual lull you see. We're not seeing that at the moment, certainly in F2. Yeah. A lot of people just getting out there and turning the wheels as much as they can.
Yeah, a lot of people pushing the tempo. We did see a lot of people on their first.
Indeed.
People out on track for longer, make sure there's always action going on. Use Nordic's about to cross the line here, so let's see where he goes. Up into third for the reigning PlayStation PSGL champion. And that is a bit more like it by his standards, but it is beatable. There's going to be a fair few drivers who are going to scooch up ahead of him before he has an opportunity to set another lap. One of them might be Jack West, who's just got to the end of Sector 1, and he set a purple Sector 1, but I'm not sure if he's actually backed out of this now.
He just had to work his way past one of the McLarens. Both of them are out there. Is it Pedreño? No, it must be Ron Hart, our current pole sitter. Gotten past by Jack West. Apologies for the sudden stutter there in the stream. My internet decided to have a sit down for a second. Thanks for that, Router. I'm staring at you. There is Ron Hart just coming to the end of his outlap. Let's see where.
Got Luke Smith on a flying lap right now. He's in the middle sector of the lap, currently sitting second, of course, after being very strong early on. Makes a tiny mistake there, though, in I think that's turn 11, and that is probably going to compromise him. I'm sorry, that's turn 9. But yeah, that's going to compromise him pretty heftily there, Luke Smith. So he's backed out of that one as well. So we may as well take a look at Mr. Ronhar then and see exactly how he works his magic.
We are on the same cue sheet there, because that's exactly what I was going to do. Down to Lagos, turn 3 then. Keeps the car nice and stable. A really awkward corner that turn 4. Off camber and sweeping over the crest. Down the hill for Torrey Vip, turn number 5. Nice and slow but steady with the power application. Purple sector 1 for the McLaren. Through turns 5 and 6. Now it is Samsung. Don't ask me, that's what they're called on the map. That's a very long way off. And he's backed out of that one. He saw, I think it's one of the Williams ahead of him. And he didn't come up as invalid on my screen. It's Sam McBride but wasn't doing anything wrong, just minding his own business.
Yeah.
But Ron Hart just deciding didn't fancy that one and has backed out of it.
Yeah, fair few drivers have had to back out of their lap time. Same for Ron Hart's teammate, Ruben Pedreño. His track map is lit up all and ready. Cabayen is about to cross the line and doesn't find any improvement. He's just setting himself up for another flying lap. I think that was Oscar Villacampa, no, Norbert Jakob, who just moved up into 7th position. Simon Perigny has shown up here later on in qualifying by getting himself up into 4th as well, ahead of Jus Nordijk. So up into 4th he goes. Make that 5th as Jack West moves himself back up into 2nd and into the conversation for at least the front row of the grid.
Very nicely done. We did say that this field is likely to condense. It's that same 1.1 seconds now separates the entire field of 18th. Tom Martinez, the tail of the with a Red Bull getting really, really squiggly on the exit of Portimao. No, not the circuit. That's what the corner is called, according to my track map at least. We'll see the Red Bull just finish off his lap as if he hasn't backed out of it. So he's still pressing on. We'll see what he's able to do. Down through the Galp, as it's called, the final turn, over to the right hand side. Oh wow, almost nailing himself to the pit lane entry wall. What about Ron Hart? Has he wound himself up for another run?
Yeah, he's still going, and he is going pretty quickly. He's improving up a 10th on his previous best as he exits Sector 2, but he had that 10th in hand already at the end of Sector 1, so Sector 2 wasn't so hot for him this time around. And we'll see whether he'll commit to this, because if he does, it's going to leave him on a bit of a tight schedule to getting on that final set of tyres and getting one final flying lap in. But he does stay out. So, no, he doesn't. At the last second, hops back in. So he will go back in, even though he was finding improvement. He might have lost a bit of it in that 3rd sector as well. But either way, that shows you that he thinks he can go even faster than a 10th better than his current time.
What he did yesterday, so he's proven he can do it once and he's looking to do it again. As
Pedreño.
Pedreño has jumped up into 2nd now with a 15.571, less than a 10th behind his fellow McLaren teammate of Thomas Ron Hart. Very nice indeed. Ooh, now as Terry Buchan's opted to retire from the session, a 16.3 will see him no higher than 16th. Ooh,
you mentioned he might be having, I believe he was having connection difficulties earlier on. I don't know if that's anything to do with it, because he still has plenty of time. He's in the pit lane. It wasn't a collision, from what I can tell. So Andre Tarabuchan seems to have just decided maybe he'll be a menace out on circuit with his lag. Unsure what's going to be going on there, but he's decided he does not want to be getting back out there. So he will start no higher than 16th. Will Lewis is the only driver out there on a flying lap at the moment.
There he is in the Haas, just coming up to Lagos, turn number 3. Now, the drivers won't tend to fly too far over to the right-hand side to open up the entry for 4. They don't need to. The amount of downforce they have, they can sweep through that turn 4 quite easily. Turn 5, Torrey Vip, or pronounce it as you will. Such an awkward corner. It's very easy to get that one wrong. Turn 6, easy right-hander. Now 7, now 8, which is Samsung. This one is a little bit blind. It's quite kind of tricky to see. Then over a very sharp crest for Craig Jones. Turn 9 now, 10 and 11. This is the Portimao section. This is the highest point in the circuit. And then you just descend. You leave your stomach behind as you drop down through the turns and through the gears. Now, Will Lewis currently in 14th, 1:15.991, and that got rather nasty on the exit of 13. And saw the end of that particular lap. Well, that's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a long run, setting yourself up out of that corner. Obviously, it's not the final point. You will still have to lift off again, but it does set you up. Having the proper rhythm out of that corner is very important to getting down that back straight and onto the finish line. So, yeah, you will lose a lot of time by making a mistake in there. So Will Lewis makes that mistake and immediately aborts the lap as a result. Jus Nordijk on another flying lap, as is Sam McBride up ahead of him. But he will be, of course, hungering to get to the top. But Sam is actually ahead of him at the moment in the order.
Oh, Jus has got some traffic ahead of him. If we ride on board with the Mercedes, you'll see, and you can see in the mini-map as well, just coming through turn 5. Oh, Torrey Vip, he's got both of the Alphas ahead of him, as well as Sam McBride, and very nicely done from Jona Martins, or Neon as he was otherwise called, and Simon Pereni. Very nicely, very alert of them, both getting very much out of the way. Sam McBride is done the same, nicely done on the outside of the Craig Jones corner. Now turn 10 and 11. there was a bit of a lock-up there from the Mercedes, but he presses on nonetheless. 1:15.762 here the time he's aiming for. That's purple in second sector for use, and Pedreño has parked it. 1:15.5 will see him no higher in the second. Can he hang on to that front row? It's up to everybody else. Everyone else is on track. Will Lewis is also parked with the 15.9. Will start no higher than 14th. Can Use Nordyke improve? He can improve to third, 7 thousandths behind Rib Pedreño.
Yeah, Luke Smith just backed out of his lap time. Sam McBride is still out there going slowly as well. What's Jack West's situation? He's just crossed the line and is starting on his final flying lap of the session. Let's see what Simon Perigny, he's just starting a lap behind him as well. So a lot of these drivers just getting started on what will be their final crack at a good grid position, and several of them could make it to the front row, especially now that Ruben Pedreño has parked it in the garage early, as you mentioned.
Now Ron Ha was, he must, I don't know whether he had a spin or he's backed out somewhere because he lost time in that last session. Jack Laverty's retired from 10th position, and Ron Ha is pressing on. Can he improve on his already impressive pole time? 1:15.491. Well, we know he can because he proved it yesterday. As Conor Muir is finished in 16th position with the 16 flat, and Luke Smith in 6th with a 15.6. Villacampa with a 15.7 in 7th position as well. So what can the rest of the field do? Sam McBride has brought his car back in. That's a 15.607 for him, and he's retired the car. Oh, that's Dormeyer. Very nicely done for the Ferrari. He's in 10th with a 15.776.
Perigny might be fast here. Perigny's coming towards the line now for Alfa Romeo. Crosses that line and goes up into second position. But the Frenchman, his teammate coming behind, can only manage 8th.
Very nicely done. A 15.534 from the newcomer. Jack West has retired the car. I thought he'd already done that. What can Ron Ha do? Ikebenyi is retired from 13th position, and that's into the pits. He didn't need to complete it, as Nordyke has retired his car. Well, the McLarens were split in the end from Simon Perigny. And that is the grid now formed for the first race of 2022 for the F2 split.
Yeah, and Thomas Ronhart didn't improve on his time he set earlier, but didn't need to, as it happened. A 1:15.491, good enough to see off any challenge from the rest of the field. But how about Simon Perigny up there in second? This is the guy that was in F3 last season. There hasn't been a game shift since then, so it's just pure improvement. There's been, it's just improvement for the Frenchman compared to the previous season, and yeah, he can be very, very happy with that. He did do very well in F3. He won the thing. But still, I think, he'll be very happy to be on the front row in a field as strong as this. Absolutely.
And again, Thomas Ronhart was not shy to mix it with the heavy hitters of F1 Esports yesterday. So, to be alongside him is a fantastic result for the Frenchman, as you say. So qualifying is done. It is Thomas Ronhart and Simon Perigny on the front row, and then it is Pedreño and Nordyke for row 2. Then you only just get a 10th of a second off the top spot for the rest of the field. Then it is Jack West and Sam McBride row 3, Luke Smith and Jono Martins in row 4, Villacampa and Andreas Dormeyer row 5, Jack Laverty and Norberto in row 6, Ikebenyi and Tom Martinez row 7, Will Lewis and Conor Muir in row 8, and Jordan Poland and Andre Terebukin, not even a second separating the field. Here we go again. That was a broken record from last season. I said they're pretty constantly less than a second for the entire field. I love it. This is what we love to see here in PSGL. And what does the weather hold? It's the same as yesterday. It's bright skies for our drivers.
Yeah, and I'm happy with that personally. Rain is always fun. Always fun to spice things up in real life. It's fun to spice things up in the game if it comes mid-race, but when the rain is at the start of the race, it's rather less interesting in general. So I think this way, we tend to get better racing action when it's dry out there on circuit, when the drivers can use their DRS. And this is a track, of course, where overtaking is a possibility. So we'll see, hopefully, plenty of that, plenty of action going on between these drivers. One interesting thing to note is of the 6 fastest drivers in the time trials for this track, 5 of them were in the top 10. In fact, I think they were in the top 7 because Luke Smith, the 6th fastest in time trials, was actually 7th overall. And the only driver who is in that top echelon in time trials who couldn't translate it to qualifying is Norbert Jakob. He's actually 5th fastest in time trials, but down in 12th here in qualifying. So usually you can't actually read too much into the best time trial times because, of course, people have as much time as they want to set the ultimate time trial lap. But in this case, it proved to be a pretty accurate litmus test.
Yeah, the tyre choice for everybody going rather according to schedule, you could say. The front runners, of course, on the softs and 11th downwards on the mediums. We did have a few curveballs yesterday, and not all of them proved entirely successful. So I think maybe people using the F1 tier as a learning benchmark and going for the more traditional softs on the front and medium runners from the midfield backwards. So we know this process by now. It's working our way through the first rolling lap of 2022 for the F2 tier here in PSGL. I've been really looking forward to getting this underway, and this is just when the adrenaline, the excitement, the heartbeat all raises for the first race of the season.
Absolutely, and it's going to be rising for few people more than it's going to be rising for, well, I was going to say Thomas Ronhaar, but given his performance in F1 yesterday, maybe he's going to be feeling a little bit more sanguine about the race here today. Maybe it's Simon Perigny starting on the front row here in F2, having been in F3 last season. Maybe he is the guy who's going to be the most nervous with the highest heart rate at the start line. Wouldn't it be nice if we could all have all these guys in a studio and we could be monitoring everyone's heart rate and you could see which is the guy who has the highest heart rate going into it, and they keep an eye on him down into turn one. But either way, I suspect Simon Perigny is going to be up there, maybe Ruben Pedreño as well. He might want to get one over early on his teammate Thomas Ronhaar because, he's been bested by him in F1 and now, at the moment, bested by him in F2 for the time being.
We will see. All those in chat, good to see. We have a lovely audience with us again. Always a pleasure to have you on board. Please do highlight any issues. There were a few teething issues with yesterday's stream. I have done some testing leading up to now, so please do highlight any issues you may see, because it's looking fine from here, but I would rather people told me if it was going wrong. So, onto the grid come the field then, as we jump on board with Jack West at the moment, because that camera's a really long way away from where I'm looking at Thomas Ronhaar. In fact, let's run with it, because we'll see if there are any trouble then. As the last of our runners, Andrei Tarabukin, under AI control, gets to his slot. We know this process for the first time this season. It is time to wind them up and let them go! Now, who is going to be bravest on the brakes? That's a pretty good start from pretty much everybody, as you would see. Oh, look at Perigny having to split the McLaren's. Ruben Pedreño had a storming start on the outside line coming through the first turn. Still side by side with Perigny, but he's beaten back into third position. Lots of jostling going on. Oh, was there trouble further back? I didn't quite see. Yes, Dormeyer. Andrea Dormeyer has had a speed, but look at this. Pedreño not losing any time, dies on the inside line coming through Toro Vip to get that second position, trying to make a McLaren 1-2, but the Frenchman is having none of it. Still side by side as we come through 5 and 6. He's going to have the inside line for the next couple of turns. Still keeping Pedreño company. Who's going to get the... Look how the cars are squiggling, trying to get all the horses down to the tarmac. Now the McLaren has the next inside line, but now it's going to be back to the Alfa Romeo, and Perigny has defended it. Very nicely done. Pedreño now tries to cut to the outside line. Can't do it. Very well defended from the F2 newcomer.
Yeah, he parked it on the apex of turn 11, and that just meant that Ruben Pedreño, who went for the up and under, tried to cut back underneath him, had nowhere to go because there was a car occupying the apex of the corner. Fantastic driving from Simon Perigny to see off the assault of the Spaniard for the time being, but I don't imagine that's the last we'll have seen of that battle. Well, it might be the last that either of these drivers are seeing of Thomas Ronhaar, though, because he's already got that 1 second gap at the front. And if he's as strong compared to the rest of the field in the race as he was in qualifying, these guys battling is just going to let him drive straight off into the sunset.
Well, indeed, there's no indication why it wouldn't be. Well, look at this. Will Lewis and Jordan Poland having an argument for 14th position. Slightly further down the field, look at this. The Haas and the AlphaTauri side by side coming through turn 4. But the Haas winning out on this occasion. There further back, the Alpine now having a go. As Jordan Poland having an argument with Will Lewis as well. Beg your pardon, there's Tarabukin having an argument with Jordan Poland. Andreas Dormeyer has caught the back of the field. There he is. Now he's got it all to do being a soft starter and now at the back end of the field. But look at that, exactly as you say, Jacob, Ronhart already has that second gap and is not looking set to lose any pace here. Everyone else is going to be in the DRS train. And there's going to have to be some kind of working together to try and catch the mighty Ronhart to prevent him running off into the sunset. But the Papaya McLaren looks set to just disappear.
Yeah, and look, he's just gained another 2 seconds out of what is effectively the final corner of this circuit. Simon Perigny cannot live with him, and he's used a lot of his battery power already. How's the Frenchman? Down at 32% as he crosses the start-finish line. Ruben Pedreño behind him at about 50, and Thomas Ronhart also in about the 50 range. So both the McLarens holding on to the ERS better than Perigny, but Ronhart is doing it while maintaining that incredible pace out there at the front. So he is in a fantastic position already to win this race. There's very little that these guys can do. If he gains 2 seconds on them, it's going to be incredibly hard with the drivers as closely matched as they are to find those 2 seconds back on a guy who's going to be undisturbed at the front of the field.
Absolutely, and Ronhart was pretty much faultless in the race yesterday, so I don't think they can rely on a mistake from the pole man to try and gain that gap down. So it's going to be a long day for Perigny, but what a great start. They're starting from second, fending off the advances of veteran Ruben Pedreño to maintain that second position. Very nicely done. But further back, look at that. There's Joost Noordlich that is maintaining that fourth position, staring at the back of the McLaren. Now that the initial melee is all done and dusted, no one needing new noses, no one needing to visit the pits early, so no hard tyres to be found just yet. Let's ride on board with the Mercedes, keeping energy usage nice and steady. DRS will be in use where they can, but of course the entire field, other than Ronhart and Perigny, all have it, so it's almost negated somewhat. So people are going to have to be careful on, be pretty choosy on how they go about making the moves and where they do it. Now turn 4, already Andreas? My goodness, that's a record. For lap 4, and he's got his name on the penalty board. As we're looking at Noordlich getting very close to Pedreño, coming down into Torrevet, turn 5. That was very close, so the Mercedes looking to keep the pressure on, and maybe that might give Perigny the breathing space he needs to try and chase off after Ronhart.
Yeah, and quickly, to be fair to Andreas Strollmeyer, he did have to battle his way back up into the field after falling back behind, so he's probably been pushing a little bit harder than the rest of the guys out here and therefore risking a few more corners. Conor Muir also picking up 3-second time penalty. He doesn't necessarily have the same sort of excuse as he's currently just falling behind the rest of the field a little bit in that Aston Martin. But yeah, up at the front, Thomas Ronhart is just consistently building that, and the battery situation, which is so important in this game. You can tell so much by how well someone's managing their battery early on, and Thomas Ronhart is doing a much better job of that than several of the drivers behind him, including Simon Perigny, who is in the worst situation of all. He doesn't have DRS to help him out down the straight, so he has to use that electrical power, and that is going to come back to bite him sooner rather than later, because he is getting pretty low, down at 22% at the moment. The guys in the top 10, as Conor Muir pulls it into the pits and retires. I'm not sure if there was something wrong with his car, maybe connection issues or something, but he has called it a day quite early on in this one. But yeah, in the guys at the top 10, it's Villacampa and Jona Martins who have the best battery state of anyone.
The McLaren of Ruben Pedreño had to defend hard from Joost Noordlich, and again on the exit of Torrevet there, really keeping the advances of the Mercedes behind him. My goodness me, Ruben Pedreño feeling the need to defend very, very hard against the advancing Mercedes. So Joost is really piling the pressure, but he can't concentrate entirely in front of him, because Sam McBride and Luke Smith are very, very close, and some of the cars getting really squiggly. When you come over that crest, the car is really unsettled, so they do have to be careful about how everything kind of compresses in. Think of Eau Rouge in that particular sense. You've got a similar effect of when they come down that drop, and it really is exceedingly steep. Everything compresses down, and the car may not necessarily be too settled as they go through it. Let's ride on board again with Noordlich as we scream down the start-finish straight. Actually, we look at Luke Smith. He's getting very close to Sam McBride. He's having a look on the inside line, but opts not to commit to that one. There wasn't enough room for the Alpine to try and squeeze past the Williams. And that's Dormeyer that's retired. So 2 cars out of the race already. There's Ronhart just minding his own business, essentially. But looking at Luke Smith, he's very, very close. Look at this back here. And again, the Alpine makes a big move on the inside line of turn 5 on the Williams. Can he wrestle the 5th position from Sam? No. Sam McBride had a great exit from Toro Vip there to keep the advancing Alpine behind. Very nicely done, but he's made a mistake into turn 8. Can the Alpine do anything about it? Not quite. Just couldn't get the traction when he needed it. But Sam McBride is feeling the pressure. Oh, what a switchback from Luke Smith. But a great exit. Now, Sam McBride really kept his head there. And he's now going to be cut back underneath by the Alpine again. This is determined from Luke Smith. Fantastic. This is only on lap 6. You know, they do realise it's more than just a 15-minute race, don't they?
Yeah, well, that's something about Luke Smith, is that he will battle for positions more often than many other drivers would. He's been using so much of his battery power. He's down at 5% as he's about to cross the start-finish line. He'll open the DRS, but there's no chance he's going to be getting past Sam McBride at the end of this straight with the complete lack of battery power that he has. The good news for Luke Smith, though, on that front is that despite the fact he couldn't get past the Williams ahead, the Williams behind is also very low on battery power, just trying to stay afloat with the rest of the field. So he's not actually at risk from Jack West behind. And I don't know if Luke Smith knows that or not, but if he does, that would make sense as to why he feels at liberty to use so much of his battery in pursuit of 5th position.
Indeed, indeed. Now, Pirelli has got as much breathing space as he's probably going to get for a while. He has a great amount of pace through the rest of the lap. It's DRS that undoes it for him because he has built up a few times, about 0.6 of a second over Ruben Pedreño. But then that DRS just absolutely decimates that gap for the Alfa Romeo. So as try as he may, he's not shaking off Pedreño. But as we've seen time and again already, Nordic is trying his best to usurp that McLaren. So it's allowing Pirelli to keep rebuilding that gap. And there it is again. It's now 7.5 tenths, as you can see. We're riding ball with the Mercedes again. Actually, no, I'm going to go with Luke Smith because he's very close to Sam McBride again with very little power left in the battery, as you explained. But just watch that gap disintegrate between Pedreño and Pirelli. You can see it's now down to, there he goes, back down to 3.5 tenths, 4 tenths of a second. So Pirelli's doing a great job of building enough of a gap to prevent him being attacked. And we now have somebody else on the penalty board. It's Norbert Jakob down in 15th position. Those medium starters are still actually in the DRS train. Oh, Luke Smith had a think about it on the inside line, coming down to Toro Vib again, but opted not to go for it. But other than our 2 retirements, everyone is still in that DRS train. The medium runners are doing a pretty good job of hanging on to the back of the soft starters.
Yeah, and the thing for Simon Perigny here is I think he has to go into the pits at basically the first possible feasible opportunity, right? Because the guys behind him, if they get the undercut on him, he has none of that battery power to fight back against the undercut. He can't put in a scorching lap and pull off the overcut when he doesn't have the power available to him. So surely he has to make sure that he cuts off any potential undercut from these guys behind as early as he possibly can. So at the beginning of the pit window...
Oh no! Sorry to cut you off, Jacob. Use Nordic spun. He used Nordic spun on the exit of Sagres. He's dropped all the way down to... and he's got a kick in the chops there from Andrei Terebukin. That's down to last. Oh no, from challenging for 4th, that is now last from the Mercedes.
Yeah, and I tell you what else it's done is it put the frighteners on for Sam McBride. He lost some momentum, and as a result, Luke Smith has been able to get past him for 4th position, which he's been coveting for a while. And Luke Smith is also having to deploy what little battery he has remaining to get back within DRS range of Pedreño and Perigny, but he has managed to do so. So that's all okay for him. There was briefly a 1-second gap that formed as a result of Just's demise, but that has quickly resealed itself.
Oh dear, not a good day in the office for Just, but I mean, he was showing incredible pace and determination, but one tiny mistake, the amount of times I said this as well last season, one tiny mistake in a field so closely matched is devastating, absolutely devastating. So it's just dropped Just from 4th to last in this field. Pit stops, when do we think everyone's going to come in? I actually forgot to note when everybody came in yesterday.
Yeah, well, I'd expect to see some people coming in Not necessarily the next couple of laps, but not too far after that, I would say. Again, I'd expect to see Simon Perroni trying to come in as early as he feasibly can. Of course, we do have a lot of drivers still out there on the medium tyres as well. None of them have managed to get ahead of any of the soft runners, with the exception of Just Nordic, of course, who had that very obvious reason why he's behind all the medium tyre runners. But no one else of the medium tyre guys has managed to make progress into what was the top 10 at the start, if you will. Jack Laverty 9th, Tom Martinez 10th, but they're still behind all those soft tyre runners. So neither of them have managed to make any sort of headway thus far, and it doesn't seem like they're gaining much. It doesn't seem like the soft tyre runners are starting to struggle too much. Having said that, Jack West almost just completely lost the car through turn 5, but the softs seem to be hanging on well enough for the time being.
Nicely caught there. And watching on board with Luke Smith, now Ruben Pedreño is... I think he's a bit closer to Perroni this time, so we might see a move from the McLaren if he can just hang on to the back of the Alfa Romeo through this last part of Sector 3. We might see the Papaya pair reunited, as far as positions are concerned, at least not on track, bit of tarmac, as Ron Haar is just maintaining his gap. He's not running off into the distance. Now was about 7.5 tenths last time around, or a couple of laps ago. Pedreño's in, so he's opted to do the undercut. Now the undercut was really powerful when it was done yesterday, and 4 other drivers, 4 drivers have pitted there. So there's Pedreño, they keep moving, I can't read them. So Pedreño, West, Martins, and Villacampa have all come into the pits to do the undercut. So that's obviously freed Perroni from any immediate challenge, and he's maintaining the gap between himself and Ron Haar pretty well. But let's see where it puts Pedreño, because he's not going to be immediately challenged by Jack West. There is the McLaren coming out of the pits with nearly 3 seconds behind him, but he's got a lot of clear track, and those mediums won't take too long to get up to speed. Especially if the soft runners are going to push it a little bit longer than they realistically should, then this could really pay off for the McLaren. We will see.
Yeah, and one interesting thing this has done is because all the tail enders of the soft guys came into the pits, Jack Laverty has a bit of clean air to work with now, but it does mean he doesn't have the DRS as well, so he might be under a bit of pressure from Tom Martinez behind. But I don't think Simon Perroni could afford to let this happen. I think if he wanted to maintain his grip on second, he had to go into the pits at the beginning of that last lap. And of course, it's hard to do. You can't necessarily predict exactly when the guys behind you are going to go into the pits, but you do know, you are able to work out as a driver what the first possible lap to come into the pits is. And I think Simon Perroni probably should have come in on that lap. We'll see how much it's cost him, as he's now in the pit lane along with Sam McBride. Luke Smith and Thomas Ron Haar both continue on, though, for another lap.
And Eustace come in as well. So, of course, his race very much compromised from that spin. But carrying on nonetheless, no damage to the car, just to his pride after that particular spin. There is our race leader, Thomas Ron Haar. 2.7 seconds to the good now, this time over Luke Smith. Of course, his challenger, his main challenger.
Oh, no! Sorry, contact there. Ruben Pedreño and Simon Perroni on the pit exit. Pedreño didn't gain as much with the undercut as I would have expected, and had to go all the way around the outside. Wall of death around turn 1 with Simon Perroni, and with the way that corner tightens and the speed of that corner, it's so hard for 2 cars to go side by side through there. They did make a bit of contact. Simon Perroni almost spun the car to the inside, but just about held onto it. But he has lost the track position to the Spaniard, Ruben Pedreño, up into what is effectively second position.
No obvious damage to the Alfa Romeo, so hopefully Simon Perroni will be able to make up the time he's lost, and he's not hanging around either. So he's doing a great job there. Now, race leader is in, so in comes Ron Haar. Is Luke Smith following suit? Yes, he is. So we're not having anybody unreasonably pushing these soft tyres too long. So it's going to hand the race lead, I should say, for the time being, to Jack Laverty. And it did look like Tom Martinez was having a bit of a think about an inside run into turn 1. But where is this going to filter Ron Haar out? Now, Ron Haar, you would think, would maintain the lead. Luke Smith, of course, right behind him. There, you could just see in the top of the shot is Pedreño. Look on the right-hand side for the pit exit. There is Luke Smith. And there we go. It's a McLaren 1-2. Luke Smith's... Oh, go on.
Smith almost just lost the car on the exit of turn 1, and that's given Sam McBride the opportunity in towards turn 2. They're going to be side by side for quite a long time, I imagine. Sam McBride looks to try and get the switch back through 4 on the run down towards 5, but it seems like he couldn't get better purchase than the Alpine, so Luke Smith holds on to what is effectively 4th position in this race, and these guys have probably seen about enough of each other by now.
But Ronha has not got as much of a lead over Pedreño as he had over Pirelli before the pit stops began. So that's a gap to keep an eye on. We'll see if Ronha can certainly rebuild that gap. But we'll see how that one plays out as time goes on. Up front, I would expect the top guys, the medium starters, to come in about four or so more laps. As again we scream on down to turn 1, the 2 Red Bulls getting a bit fidgety behind the leading Haas now. That's Mercedes and Bainer. No movement at the moment, although the Red Bulls very, very close. Oh, bit of a nudge between the two as Terry Buchan gets another penalty on the board. Still only 2 cars remaining with penalties still carrying. It's Terry Buchan and Norbert Jakob. It's Ike Bainer getting very close again. It looks like he nudged Tom again. That's subtle.
Well, Ike Bainer, of course, not actually a Red Bull driver, just a reserve this season, so he doesn't need to worry too much about annoying his teammate if he is consistently tapping his rear end. Maybe if they were teammates for the season, he might be a little bit more careful with the car up ahead, but it doesn't seem like harm has been done to either of the two.
Luke Smith has fallen out of DRS range to Simon Pirelli at the moment, or he's right on the cusp of doing so. So that's going to be a bit of a task. He's got no battery power, 5%, which is pretty much nothing, to try and do something about it. He's just hanging on to the DRS range at the moment. That's very, very dangerous at that kind of range. You can see Simon Pirelli is hustling Pedreño again. That gap between the two McLarens.
Baena might go for this. Up further up, Baena's going to have a go, and Tom Martinez is also going to have a go. It's both Red Bulls, and they do make contact on that occasion down the straight somehow. Jack Laverty gets out of the way and lets them both get there, but Jack actually is going to still be in there on the inside of Ike Baena. Meanwhile, Andre Tarabuchan, something's happened to him. He's gone into the pit lane and retired. But it's the Red Bulls who now have a 1-2. It was Jack Laverty who was leading at the start of the lap, and now he's down into 3rd.
Wow, lots of scrapping going on then for the medium starters. Look at that 5-6 car train going on there. Watch on board with with Jordan Poland's got a great ringside seat for all the scrapping going on. Yeah, Terry Buchan, he was up to 7th or something like that, so not sure why that was. He retired in the pit lane, so 3 cars gone, 15 remain in this race. But what a scrap we've got currently up front. Of course, Ronha will re-inherit the lead once these guys pit, and why you're just watching on board with Jordan Poland how squiggly these cars still are. Now these mediums are going to be getting to the end of their life, but they should still have some meat left on the bone, but goodness me, it's getting very, very squiggly for them.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the timing of the overtakes that were made. If Jack Laverty managed to slot back in between the 2 Red Bulls, he might have been in a good position to regain the race lead just before the pit window opened. But now that there's 2 Red Bulls up ahead of both of the Hasses, this gives Tom Martinez and Ike Baena the chance to try and play the team game. I did mention earlier that Ike Baena, of course, not a full-time member of the Red Bull team, but you might still try and play some team games with Tom Martinez in this circumstance. And we'll have to wait and see about that one. But they are both out there at the front at the moment. But all this battling, of course, between the medium tyre runners is going to make it more difficult for them to make any imprint on the guys that started on the softs once they come into the pit. Because every time these guys do battle on track, they'll be losing tenths of a second to the guys who are just calmly circulating out there behind them at the moment.
Oh, Pirelli very close to the back of Pedreño again coming into the Torre Vip turn. So close. He's really trying to put as much pressure on the Spaniard as he can, but right behind him Luke Smith has closed in that gap right back up to the Alfa Romeo. So just everything he's trying to do to improve his position is yet to yield any result, but still half the race to do, and we'll see how the rest of the race unfolds. Yeah, you still see the cars just misbehaving at certain points. As I mentioned before, that drop from the Portimao turn, turns 10 and 11, just descends into what seemingly, is one of those drops that leaves your lunch behind and half your stomach as well. It's just such a descent. Oh, never mind. The Red Bulls were getting very, very close there. Martinez leading the way currently over Ike Baena. Very close between
Perigny's going to have a go on Pedreño. No, he backs out of it. He had an opportunity there. Simon Perigny had completely an opportunity to try and get past Ruben Pedreño into turn 1, but he decided against it. Meanwhile, the Red Bull's still battling.
Yeah, as Bayena's now gotten ahead. Martinez now side by side with Jack Laverty on the exit of the Toro Vip turn. Still side by side as he just manages to recover that position by turn 7. But it's now Baena that leaves the way for the Red Bull pairing, as he just jumped on the inside of Tom Martinez, going down into Toro Vip, and he's now leaving his teammate to deal with the pack behind. Yeah, it's an interesting one from Simon Perigny there. He's opting not to go for the move, but again, that's something we saw yesterday. People had the opportunity to try and make the move into turn 1, but opted to try and do it down into Toro Vip into turn 5 instead, as it's much harder to counterattack after that point.
Yeah, and it's also a possibility that Simon Perigny knows that he should be able to get an overtake done on the final lap if he wants to, and he might just already be waiting, thinking about that final lap and holding behind Ruben Pedreño, because remember back to the first stint when Simon Perigny was constantly at his very limited battery power. He was using all of that battery throughout the lap, and now that's happening to Ruben Pedreño. The guy without the DRS is always going to have worse battery state, and that's going to leave them vulnerable right at the end. Here we see Perigny doing it again. That's exactly what he did last lap. He's going to continue to do that, and there's not much Ruben Pedreño can do about it unless he completely slams on the brakes and lets him pass, and that's a risky game when you got Luke Smith very close behind as well.
Simon Perigny almost slammed into the back of the Papaya McLaren there, as we were watching him come down into turn 1. And of course, this is allowing Ronhard to rebuild the lead he had before. He's just doing what he needs to do. He can go quicker than this. He doesn't need to, and he knows he doesn't need to. So he's just rolling through the laps to maintain the lead he's got. Up front, though, Baena still sliding that car on the exit at turn 11 and through the laps again. Now, I'm thinking we're going to be starting seeing these medium runners coming in the next couple of laps. We'll see what they do, as through Sagres for Baena now. And leading the pack of chasers to the conclusion of the lap. Does he come in? No, he is remaining out, as is... Oh, one of them did. That was Will Lewis from 4th position. Has decided to try and undercut his fellow medium starters. That's going to drop him to probably around 13th or so at a guess. So we'll see how that plays out for him. As, of course, and there you can see on the right-hand side of the shot, the Haas coming into his pit box. There's Pedreño Perigny, not quite as close as he was previously, but still status quo being maintained at the moment. Will Lewis is going to be reappearing. Never mind, he's at the back of the field, but now on fresh soft tyres. We'll see if he's able to do it. God, Ruben Pedreño, as you were alluding to earlier, Jacob, he's got no battery life at all. He's really having to push hard to keep Perigny behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was a good last lap from Pedreño. He didn't use any more battery than he's usually been doing, but he was actually about a tenth and a half faster than he had been on the lap before. So that was just a straight-up good lap from Ruben Pedreño, which has stopped the bleeding a little bit, but he's going to need to put in a lot more of those before the end of this race, unless he wants to be a sitting duck right at the very end to Simon Perigny, which is exactly what's going to happen to him at the moment. The thing is, though, you could say, okay, well, you're Ruben Pedreño here. Why don't you just completely refuse to use your battery power? Make sure you charge that battery back up, and so what if Perigny gets past? That just puts him in the hot seat, in the difficult situation. Well, the trouble with that is people we see now come into the pit lane, and Baena speeds into the pit lane. That's going to be bad news for him in the Red Bull. Tom Martinez and Norbert Jakob both staying out, though. These guys are going to come out down amongst Joost Noordijk and Will Lewis at the back. So it's going to be a while before we see these guys filtering in with the rest of the field.
My goodness, as I jumped to Iker Baena, he destroyed a board. So that pit lane entry went horribly wrong for him. Yet Martinez had no choice. Of course, him and Baena sharing the Red Bull pit box. He had no choice but to continue. Baena reappears in 11th. Laverty and Poland return at the tail of the field. Oh, Will Lewis
is having a go here. Will Lewis on Iker Baena.
The Red Bull just about winning out, but Will Lewis still having a go with warmer tyres towards the outside line, coming into Toro Vip. Can he get it done? Ooh, that's a bit of a nudge there from the Red Bull, but they still carry on and still the inside line.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow, that got a bit ugly for a little while.
That was a major snap of oversteer mid-corner for Will Lewis, who was on the inside, had to counter-steer, and when you counter-steer, you steer to your outside, and that's exactly where Ikebaena was. So he steered into the Red Bull, had to do it to avoid the snap of oversteer that he got. It's an instinctual reaction when you're in that position, but it was Will Lewis's mistake that put him in that position in the first place. So Ikebaena won't be too happy about that, but he has managed to maintain his position regardless, and in fact, it was Will Lewis that picked up the 3-second time penalty. So not much harm done in the end in what was a relatively innocent incident.
So the final pit stops are now being done for Martinez and Jakob. That, of course, returns the race lead to Ronha. There is Pedreño with his pursuers right behind.
Oh, look at this. 3 wide almost there behind Tom Martinez, Jack Laverty and Jordan Poland, as well as Jus Nordijk, all in a battle one another. There's Jus still going to be on the inside. Jordan Poland right there alongside Jack Laverty. They're still going to be side by side, as Jordan Poland was a little bit too far wide, trying to push Jack over to the left-hand side, wants to find some space for himself on the circuit, but can't do it. And there's Jack Laverty back up the inside again, taps the rear end of Tom Martinez. Tom boxing in the Haas in this circumstance, and that might be what Jordan Poland needed to make sure that he maintains his grip on this position for now. Tom Martinez can't afford to get mired down in this when he needs to be chasing after Will Lewis and Ikebaena, because he's just fallen a second behind. But Jack Laverty is still having a go at Jordan Poland, but he won't be able to make it past on this lap unless he sends a dive bomb here, and he will not do so. So settles back in behind in the Haas, and Tom Martinez will be breathing a sigh of relief that neither of them careened into the back of him in a braking zone.
I wonder if Jus Nordijk was waiting for the explosion to happen. He would have gained 2 or 3 positions as a result. This might not be for points, but it's the racing is no less intense as a result. But Nordijk, with those harder tyres, is not realistically going to have an answer to those ahead of him. Jumping back to Simon Pireni, again, he had the opportunity to try and send one on the inside of Pedreño, but he's just biding his time and keeping as much power in the battery as he can. Is he going to do it this time into Toro Vip? He looks to the inside. No, again, he's just thinking about... I wonder whether he's thinking, I'm not likely to catch Ronha. I'm just going to, just stay here and go for it on the last lap. It's a bit of a risk, because if you make a mistake, you've got no time to recover from it. We'll see what plan Pireni has as the race unfolds.
Yeah, you always want to be the driver in second in any train going into the final lap. And Simon Pireni knows that. It's going to be third in the race, but second in this DRS train of cars. It's exactly where he wants to be. He does not want to put himself back out at the front. He knows how much he was bleeding battery power to stay ahead of the rest of the guys. He knows that he's much better off being here, farming up that ERS and letting Ruben Pedreño use all of his available ammunition so that he has nothing left to fight with when it comes to the final lap of the race. One interesting thing to watch out for, Ikebaena and the rest of the soft tyre runners, they're all going about 0.8 of a second a lap faster than this train of cars right now. That could see them getting in the mix for maybe a podium once we get to the last couple of laps.
Well, fighting is by no means concluded. It's only about 3.5 seconds between Baena and Jonah Martins, who has fallen off the back of the front pack, unfortunately, by about 4 seconds himself. So Iga Baena is pressing on, but he's suffering the same issue. Oh, Pireni and Luke Smith having an argument down at Toro Vip. Who's going to win out there with the Alpine on the outside line for turn 6, but he's going to have the inside line for the next couple. He's opted not to... Oh, look how squiggly Pireni got there. Still side by side. How on earth did Pireni get the traction he needed on the exit of turn 7? Very sideways, and still managed to keep the position, but now sell side by side for half a lap. Oh, what a massive snap of oversteer from Pireni. Oh, whoa, my goodness me, Luke Smith not prepared to let this go at all. Dives on the inside line for 13. Can't hold it though. Pireni, that's cost him time over Pedreño. Yeah. The Spaniard is thanking his stars for that one, I'd imagine.
Yeah, he'd have loved it even more if Luke Smith got past, because Luke Smith is using every bit, every ounce of power he can to try and get past Pireni. Pireni just wants to sit here and farm up his ERS so he can get a guaranteed second by the end of the race, but now he might not even get that as he moves late, and there's contact between the two of them. Luke Smith still going, though, trying to get around the outside of Pireni. Backs out of that move, and did he pick up front wing damage? I don't think so. I think he's all okay there in the Alpine, but couldn't find his way past Pireni at the beginning of this lap either. Pireni is still outside of DRS range. He might still have one more assault from Luke Smith that he has to worry about. Down in towards turn 5. Here's Luke Smith, will send it very, very deep on the brakes indeed, but he gets it stopped. Very well judged by Luke Smith, and the British driver in the Alpine up into third with a fantastic move on Simon Perigny, who is going to be very, very frustrated indeed because he thought he had second pretty much nailed on, and now he's staring at fourth.
And he's got 10 laps to decide what he's going to do about it. Now, those around him may not have the battery power to try and do something about that position for him. Simon Perigny, what's his battery power at? He's used it all. He was up to 40% a few laps ago, but he's just gone now, trying to defend from Luke Smith, who has won out on that position at the moment. Well, Luke's battery power is in a similar state. So, oh no, Simon Perigny, that's the last thing he wanted. And Luke Smith is finding some extra revs in the Alpine and trying to chase off after Ruben Pedreño. Oh, I think that's going to be an endless, non-yielding chase for him. Now, Perigny, again, he didn't have an opportunity to attack. I don't think he's going to stay in the tyre tracks of the Alpine in the same way that he did Pedreño. Because Luke Smith has just proven he will chuck it in when he needs to, as Baena gets on the penalty board again. I reckon Perigny is going to try and retake that position as soon as he's able.
Yeah, and I think Ruben Pedreño, basically, he owes Luke Smith an Estrella Galicia or some other kind of beer after this race because, Luke Smith has just basically guaranteed a 1-2 for McLaren by getting in Simon Perigny's way, by forcing this 1 second gap to build up and giving Ruben Pedreño this critical time where he can build up his ERS if he wants to. He's not, though. He's still actually deploying. He wants to maintain this gap and make sure these guys can't get within DRS range of him, and he is still building that gap at the moment. 1.6 seconds is a strong margin. And it's a tough call for Pedreño, actually, in this circumstance. Does he still use his battery power and try and keep outside of DRS range? Or does he accept the inevitability that he's going to get back within DRS range from the cars behind and make sure that he has enough battery power to hold them off when it comes to it? He's going for option A and trying to keep this gap between himself and the guys in third and fourth.
One thing I'm noticing, we were watching from Sam McBride again on the Williams. Perigny's car, it seems, really loose compared to those around him. I'm wondering, has he burnt the best out of his tyres staying in the tyre tracks of Pedreño? Because, of course, he wouldn't have had as much downforce on his car as Pedreño would have had. So Perigny's setup is just more loose than those around him. I wonder whether that's really hurting him at the moment. He might not have the traction he needs to retake that position from Luke Smith. He's relying more on battery power now to make up for that loss of grip. From the few times I've seen when the cars are getting out of shape, it always seems to be Perigny that has, or at least the worst kind of oversteer moments. There's a few twitches here and there for most people, but Perigny seems to have more than the rest.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it can be entirely explained by dirty air or anything like that, because all these guys in this train have been in dirty air of the cars ahead for this whole run. In fact, if anything, Perigny's had less dirty air to contend with than Luke Smith and Sam McBride than Jack West. So it must just be a driving style situation, maybe a setup situation for Simon Perigny at the moment. And yeah, you're right, he is having a little bit more trouble keeping that car on the black stuff than some of the other guys, but he is still in a better battery power state than most of the guys around him. Sam McBride and Jack West are both actually up at about 30%. Perigny is better positioned than both Luke Smith and Ruben Pedreño, who are down at 1% as they get towards the end of this straight. Critically, though, for Pedreño, his gamble to keep deploying his battery power as he had been earlier on in the race is not paying off. These guys are basically within DRS range of him again now. And so he needed to maintain that gap for his gamble to pay off. He hasn't maintained the gap. So now he could find himself vulnerable on the final lap again.
I think he will be. Also, someone else is going to be real popular real quick is Joni Martins. He's been caught by the ever-encroaching pack of soft runners behind him. Now, Used Nordic is still hanging on to the back of this pack as well, but he's going to have no answer. 14-lap-old medium tyres is not going to yield him anything following his spin. But Joni Martins is going to be real popular real quick. Iga Baena already on his case, but Iga Baena is collecting all the penalties he possibly can. He's playing the Pokemon game with the penalty count at the moment. But there's Martins, and not far behind is the fellow Red Bull of Tom Martinez. So I doubt that Martins is... I'm sure he'll try and defend that, but he's not realistically going to have too much of an answer for the encroaching pack of sharks behind. Also trying to keep an eye on Perigny's gap to Luke Smith as well. It's about 0.3 of a second. It's going to drop a little bit, but he's not going to go for the move on That's Luke Smith and Pedreno. Pedreno's got himself a penalty. Oh no! And there goes the Red Bull, as I thought it would. Ikebayana not wasting any time and dives through on the earliest opportunity to claim that 8th position. 5 seconds to close down to Villacampa. That would then put him in this pack of medium runners that would potentially chase him up to 4th or 3rd at least. A bit of a tall ask for the remaining laps, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think it's too much. It's too late now for these soft tire runners. They didn't make enough time up with only about 5 laps remaining, and these guys making about 0.8 of a second per lap. They're only just going to be getting to the rear end of Villacampa by the time this race is done, unless these medium tires go off in a big way in the last few laps. And I don't really expect them to be that terrible once they get across the line. They'll be pretty marginal, but not absolutely abject, I don't think. Speaking of abject, that's the situation for Ruben Pedreno right now compared to what it was a few laps ago when Luke Smith got past Simon Perigny and that gap expanded between Ruben Pedreno and the guys in 3rd and 4th. He had a grand opportunity to get all of his battery power back and then he'd be fine. He didn't do it. He tried to maintain the DRS range. He couldn't do that. Now he's got the penalty. Now he's got Luke Smith going for a move into turn 1.
And without any delay, Luke Smith just sweeps around the McLaren. Also, Ruben Pedreno is playing Russian roulette with his fuel. We were riding on board with, or watching him from the external shot. There it is again. The yellow fuel light is coming on. That means he's got to fuel save at some point. Ruben's race is just disintegrating. Perigny, that was a robust defence for Pedreno there to keep the Frenchman behind. But it may come to nothing as Simon Perigny tries to get the inside line of the exit of Torovit, but can't quite get it. I think Pedreno is going to have to just let this go. There's Jonah Martins now. His day getting even worse. He's fallen to 10th behind the Red Bulls, as we saw. But that gap is actually increasing between 7th and 8th. So I don't think Bayern is going to make any further progress up the field unless there's some kind of major incident, as we saw. Oh, Ruben Pedreno. What a great shame. That's just going to drop him to 7th, unfortunately.
Yeah, and let's not forget as well, his tyres are older than these guys who are immediately around him. He's got the same age tyres as Jack West and Oscar Villacampa and Jonah Martins. But the guys who are around him on track, Simon Perigny, Sam McBride, Luke Smith, these guys have fresher tyres than the McLaren, and that might be playing a role at this stage. There might be a certain threshold, a certain cliff that Ruben Pedreno has just now hit that these other guys haven't quite made it to yet. And as a result, he is starting to tumble backwards and struggling to keep his car even just on the track and to keep it within those white lines as he again locks up there into turn 3. He's really struggling with that car at the moment, taking the grass through turn 4. Going to be under pressure from Perigny down in towards this corner. It doesn't seem like Perigny's going to be going for that move on that occasion. Another lockup from Pedreno, oversteer mid-corner. That McLaren is looking really rough now.
Again, Perigny could be thinking, realistically, I could overtake, could make the move on Pedreno, but he can see that he's guaranteed to be 3rd at the moment. Of course, assuming he doesn't get attacked by the Williams behind, he may just opt to stay there and not increase, not add his name to the penalty count. So we will see what he does with the remaining 3 and a bit laps to go. Just to remind you who our race leader actually is, it's that McLaren. On the helicopter cam, all to himself. He's had an absolutely flawless drive again. This is a definite star of the future to keep an eye on. Remember this name, Thomas Ronhaar. He proved it yesterday, and he's proving today that it was no fluke. That is all pace and talent that we are seeing unfold here in PSGL F2. On board with Jack West, there's not likely to be too much shuffling to go. 3 laps remain here for the opening round of season 30.
One thing to watch though in these last few laps, if you're looking for remaining shuffling or where you might see it, Sam McBride, keep an eye. It's got a bit more, about 10% more, consistently 10% more battery power than the 2 guys ahead of him. Ruben Pedreno is really down in the dumps in that regard, and Simon Perigny is not much better. So, if these guys fight each other in the last couple of laps, Sam McBride might find a way to sneak past Perigny and therefore get himself a place on the podium. It's not going to be an easy ask, but it might happen in these last couple of laps. So keep an eye on Sam McBride. Maybe keep an eye on Jack West behind him as well, though his tyres are getting pretty ancient, so he might not quite have the same ability as his teammate up ahead to make waves.
Absolutely. So, as the field works his way through the 3rd sector again to start lap 32. Does 2 laps remain? What has been, again, a thrilling race, but still positions to decide. Is Pirelli going to make a move this time, or is he going to leave it just one more lap over Pedreño? I think if he does make the move, I doubt Pedreño is going to have an answer. Oh, here we go. Surely this is the opportunity then for the Alfa Romeo. He's got so much more momentum.
No.
Or has he? No. Pedreño managed to get the extra pace he needs. Again, the Frenchman may just opt to simply not make the move. He doesn't have to. He will inherit that third if he doesn't get a penalty of his own. And that's the danger. If you make a move that is not necessarily one you have to do, you run the risk of getting a penalty yourself. We've seen it many, many times. We will see. He may just opt to stay there, but he's always got to keep an eye for those two Williams lurking right behind him. They may have other ideas as the lap count hits the end.
And I've got a bit of a theory about Simon Perigny here. You mentioned that he seemed to be having more trouble with the rear end of his car getting loose in certain corners. And that can lead to a lack of confidence through certain corners, like turn 4, where the car does have that tendency to fall out from under you if you're not careful. And Simon Perigny has been consistently losing time to the guys around him through turn 4, lap after lap. And when you lose time through turn 4, you can't make an overtake into turn 5. It's just not going to happen. So Ruben Pedreño consistently builds that gap between turns 4 and 5. And that means that Perigny only has turn 1 to think about when it comes to this opportunity to try and claim at least third place on the road. Will he do it on this lap?
Will he do it indeed? Oh, wow. Jack West having to defend against Villacampa. I just saw the shot there as the Red Bull can't quite get alongside the AlphaTauri, beg your pardon. Can't quite usurp the Williams, or the second Williams, of Jack West there for 7th place. Is surely Pirelli's going to think about the move now as Will Lewis and Jonah Martins swap around, but no, apparently he's not close enough to Pedreño. I think he's just going to defend for all he's worth. So this is going to be a podium if he can hang on to it. Most of the penalties are at the back, other than Ruben Pedreño. He'll be kicking himself for that particular. But what is going on back here? There's lots of swaps going on here. Nordlich and Jakob having an argument. There's Poland that's just fallen behind Martins and Lewis. They're having a great scrap in the final lap. Everyone's just doing what they can to try and improve their position with the few kilometers now running away. Let's see what is going on here. So, round the penultimate turn, round the final turn, your winner here in PSGL F2 for round number 1 of season 30 is the McLaren of Thomas Ronhaar. What a great performance. Luke Smith is going to claim second. Third on the road will be Pedreño, but that's going to go to Simon Perigny. Sam McBride 4th. Jack West 5th. Villacampa 6th. Pedreño is going to claim 7th. Tom Martinez 8th. Ika Baena with odd penalties going on there. I didn't even have a chance to read the rest of the grid. Wow, what a great performance. But wow, you mentioned Ronhaar was one to watch for. There's several names to look for. Luke Smith, driver of the day, why not? Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, though, Luke Smith, if you ignore the fact that Thomas Ronhaar was just clearly better than everyone else today, Luke Smith did a fantastic job. In terms of racecraft, he really came up and showed his best here today. And he was making these hyper-aggressive moves throughout the race. And so many times you see people saying that's pointless to do. You shouldn't be doing that. You should just sit in the DRS train. He proved all that wrong here today by claiming second, despite the fact he was consistently draining all of his battery and just harassing the cars around him. They'll have been incredibly frustrated with him, and they'd have thought that he had no chance of a podium come the end of the race. Well, he's proved them wrong, and he's managed to get up there into second, having started only 7th on the grid. So really good drive, actually, from Luke Smith. But of course, not quite as good as the almighty performance from Thomas Ronhaar.
Yeah, no argument there whatsoever. Fantastic performance from Ronhaar. Luke Smith 2nd, Pirelli 3rd, Sam McBride 4th, Jack West 5th, Villacampa 6th, Ruben Pedreño 7th, Tom Martinez 8th, Hughes Nordlich 9th, and Jack Laverty rounding out the top 10. Fighting throughout the field is what we come to love from our PSGL F1 tiers. Let's give our drivers a few minutes to make themselves known, see if they want to come and have a chat to us, because I'd love to see what they have to say. It's not mandatory, but let's face it, we all want to have a natter to them and see what they have to say. Oh, wow, what a great way to start this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic action. Not so much at the very front, but the battle for 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th, the remainder of those podium spots and some of the higher point scoring finishes as well was, I think, enough to keep us entertained, even if Thomas Ronhaar was doing his best to make the race as boring as he possibly could with his just fantastic driving out there. It's a shame as well, the Contra strategists, it just didn't quite work out for them. They didn't manage to gain enough time. They only managed to upset a couple of the guys that started on the softs. And so I think they'll be a touch disappointed with that. There was a lot of infighting between that group, and that would have lost them time, critical time as well. And Tom Martinez, if he'd been full teammates with Ika Baena would have led him through a lot earlier, and Tom Martinez might have been able to have a run at the back of these guys, but he spent too many laps stuck behind guys who are on slightly older tyres than him, who are slightly slower than him, and who had all these penalties building up as well. So he couldn't really make the headway he would have wanted to, and he would have been the one to fly the flag for the Contra strategist if anyone could have done. But sadly for him, it was not to be in this race.
That's the thing, isn't it? And again, we saw it. The Contra strategy attempted and backfired a few times yesterday in the F1 race. So it's there are times when the Contra strategy will make you look like an absolute hero, but that's gambling for you. It won't always pay off. You do what you feel is right, and these guys have put in so much time and effort and practice. The grid is looking absolutely incredible for this season. So, irrespective of who's fighting who, I think we're in for some amazing times as we progress through. And we have our given driver of the day actually has made himself known. Let us have a chat to second place, Luke Smith.
Hello.
My goodness me, talk about making a move stick at the crucial time. Well done, sir.
Thank you. I mean, that wasn't an easy race by any means, so yeah. And also GG to Simon, that was a really, really nice battle. Glad we could keep it clean, and yeah, that was a really awesome comeback for me.
My goodness me. We were saying that there were some that might think that that was the wrong time to make the move. You left too much time to be counterattacked, but you just did it and went, no, that's mine, and then you ran off.
Well, I knew I had quite a low wing setup relative to most of the others. My qualifying pace I don't think reflected what I could have done. My PB was like a 0.3, so there was definitely a lot more. But yeah, the low wings really helped me to get through the field, save a little bit more ERS than most, and be able to attack or hold position whenever I needed to. So yeah, I'll be honest, most of that was probably set up, but obviously some of it also required a little bit of work behind the wheel.
Yeah, we saw a few cars getting very, very squiggly.
Yeah. I think a lot of them also had quite a lot of tyre wear as well, and very little ERS. So they were going to want to hold on, but they wouldn't have really had a lot to hold on with. So it was definitely easier towards the latter part of the stint, where a lot of people were starting to run out of tyres, run out of ERS, and really not have anything to defend with. That's when it started to become a little bit easier to make those moves. But yeah, I still can't underestimate the caliber of this grid. It's insane this season. Honestly, if you Ronhaar, he's P4 in F1 and P1 obviously here, but the pace difference is not far at all between those two grids. It is insane this season.
Yeah, no argument there at all. But what a fantastic performance from you, Luke. Well deserved nomination for Driver of the Day. Your racing was exemplary, and very, very much look forward to the season as it progresses. Best of luck for the season. Thank you very much, Luke Smith.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
Oh, we will certainly look forward to seeing you again. Let's have a chat with our race winner, or well, quite frankly, race dominator, Thomas Ronhaar.
Hello.
Yeah.
That looks simple. That just looks so easy for you.
Yeah, get Paul on my banker. I mean, I think everyone was bottling and quali. I know a lot of people could go faster than the pole time. But yeah, I think pressure just hit everyone in qualifying. But then, the race, I knew I had the pace for the race, definitely. But to gap the field by that much, I didn't expect it. I think they were banning quite a bit at the beginning stages, so I could pull away from the DRS and I knew if I could pull out the DRS, I can just pull it away from the guys behind.
Were you in communication with Ruben Pedreño at all during the race with the two?
No,
no you guys not necessarily working together or anything like that, just all out there on your own, pulling off that huge gap. Wow, because I mean, honestly, at times it looked like there could be some working concert going between the two of you, with him being there in second as well. It's obviously a great position to have the rear gunner, but apparently not. So yeah, no, congratulations on that. One question I want to ask real quick is, so you've really shown yourself to be at an incredibly high level here at Portimao. Everyone, there's no denying that. How are you feeling about the rest of the circuits? Is Portimao your best track, or is this something we can expect to see from you at countless tracks this season?
I do think Portimao is definitely a good track for me, but I still think there are tracks that are equal, like my pace, and there's other tracks that are worse for me, and are better tracks definitely. So yeah, looking forward to Silverstone. I think Silverstone's next. Yeah, I think I can do quite well there as well.
I love the fact that there are some tracks that are better, and you're winning this one by nearly 6 seconds, Truth. But fair play. Absolutely brilliant stuff, and well done on your performance yesterday as well. That was absolutely stunning to see. What a way to establish your name. We look forward to seeing your performance as the season continues. Thank you very much, Thomas Ronha. Well, Simon Perini has opted not to be interviewed, which is absolutely fine. It's not mandatory. We do like to have a chat with our Podium 3, but some people aren't too confident with it, so we won't force the issue. So we'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much to those that have been with us throughout the stream. A great pleasure to have you on board with us. And for those catching up post-event, a great pleasure for you as well. Thank you very much, Jacob Hancocks, Mr. Aladar, for joining me in the box. It's always a great pleasure to have you alongside me, good sir.
Yeah, and it's always a good pleasure to join you as well. And yeah, I'm great taster for the season to come. Delighted that we had so much action on track today, and hopefully we'll see it just as high octane in Silverstone.
I have absolutely no doubt. Yes, it is Silverstone next time around. So that'll be same time, same place, 8 p.m. next Thursday for round number 2 of Season 30. Please do join us. We have every anticipation it'll be just as good. Until then, thank you very much, and good night.